People who have been cheated on. What was the red flag that gave it away? Story 1. She started spending a lot of time at her cousin's house. Seemed obvious she was secretly meeting up with a dude and using the cousin as a cover story, so I checked her phone and was shocked to find I was wrong. She was actually just banging her cousin. Story 2. I showed up at her house to surprise her after work, but to my surprise, a guy answered the door. Turns out he was her fiancé who was working abroad and had decided to come home early to surprise her also. I had no idea she was engaged. Story 3. Phone bill showed she was texting this other number $600 a month. It looked familiar, so when I dialed it, it was a buddy of mine. Story 4. The absolute worst part of this thread is the relationship that comes after. 'Cause now, we're always looking for signs, even when we aren't looking. Story 5. Her side piece got tired of her telling him she'd leave me and her not doing it, so he contacted me himself and told me. Story 6. The person she cheated on me with messaging me on Facebook saying, "Nice ring you bought her, felt good up my..." Funny in retrospect. Story 7. A couple of months into dating, she said how much she loved me and that I would be the first partner ever for her not to cheat on. Narrator, he would not be the first. Story 8. The old working late chestnut, blowing V hot and cold, encouraging me to go out with the boys, then coming home early and finding her on her back getting banged kinda confirmed my suspicions. Story 9. She was really hot then cold. She'd ignore me for days, then all of a sudden want to be with me nonstop. Then after a while, she'd ghost again. I thought she just needed some alone time after we spent so long together, which I understand and appreciated. But I later found out that she would start to be distant when she made contact with someone else, then have this hyper-fixated mini-relationship with them, usually culminating with her cheating. Then she'd come back and be all over me, I suspect out of guilt. Then other weird stuff, she'd be really cold on me for a while. She went to some camp as a counselor and was really distant the whole time. Then randomly sent me a bunch of naked photos of herself, then not answer my texts because of the bad signal. But by then I had caught on. Those pics were for someone else, and I was getting secondhand nudes of my girlfriend from my girlfriend. We didn't last much longer than that. Story 10. She had been having an emotional affair with a guy from work but said she wasn't talking to him anymore. We were on a road trip, she was driving, and I was using her phone for GPS since mine was messed up. She got a text from a phone number about seeing her tomorrow. She tried to play it off like it was a wrong number, but I recognized it was his and called her out on it. A few days later, on the advice of multiple friends, I went to our cell phone company and got a copy of her call logs. She'd been calling him many times over weeks, not to mention how many times he called her. It was always when she'd go on walks by herself at night because she likes the quiet alone time. Yeah, and the selfies she had on her phone of her looking in a bikini or laying on bed were just because she liked how she looked. I can't believe how stupid I was to believe that lying cheater. Story 11. My friend that I met online from another state is coming to visit me. Don't come over that night. He wants me to finally watch that one Studio Ghibli film. Name escapes me. Castle in the Sky or something? I was so naive it barely bothered me at the time. It hit me later. Story 12. Nothing. I only heard it through others a few months after we broke up over other stuff. There were no signs, no sneaky behavior, no weird things overall. Probably that's what made it the worst to deal with. The entire lack of signs. Story 13. Listening to a voicemail in the morning recorded at 3:17 a.m. where she's crying and tells me that she loves me and the wind in the background from her driving down the highway drunk as a skunk. There's only one place she was driving to that late at night, lol. Pretty big red flag. Story 14. The dead bedroom that lasted 7 years. Each year was some form of excuse involving some sort of medical issue that would just resolve itself without requiring any sort of medical treatment. The last straw was buying a house in her hometown, where all of her childhood friends were a part of a largish, for the total population, swinger community. One of my friends from work came up to me while we were on a break and asked me, "How come I never see you at any of Kay's, her best friend and host of 90% of the swinger events, bonfire parties?" I was like, "What bonfire parties?" Their reaction and the look on their face, immediately embarrassed and pitying mixed with horror and fear, told me absolutely everything I needed to know. She had been doing this for years. I was clueless because I was convinced that she was completely loyal. I was in an incredibly difficult and traumatic marriage to my son's mom, my first wife. She committed many felonious acts and was eventually convicted of grand larceny for stealing large sums of money from developmentally delayed adults. She got caught in a sting operation by a joint task force of FBI and county sheriff. I was not involved and only ever spoke with law enforcement over the phone. She kidnapped our grade school child during his recess period, told no one and ran to her daddy, who lives in the next state over from us, presumably believing that she was safe because she crossed state lines? My take anyway. She received 6 whole days in a county jail and then got her rich daddy to expunge her record. We were divorced a year later and it ruined me. So, I filed for divorce from my second wife immediately and completely lost my shit on her in the comments section. She got the house. I got my dog, my truck, and my trailer and live at my mom's house again. I just turned 50. Story 15. The usual. Getting home from work unusually late. Suddenly texting a lot more than usual. Once enough sets of 2 and 2 showed up, I started putting them together. I even went as far as to ask her if there was anything she'd like to tell me. She acted like she had no idea what I was talking about. And I told her, something's going on, and I'm going to figure out what it is. It would probably be better if you just told me. Still, she persisted. A month or 2 later, I found the evidence of her betrayal. Story 16. The last guy to cheat on me. I remember the first sign vividly. We were out bowling with friends. He had been on his phone more than usual, and then I saw it. He smiled at his phone. Not in the, haha, my friends are funny kind of way. You know the smile? I got that awful feeling in my chest. After he denied anything going on, I went on his phone while he was asleep. I'm not proud of it. I saw the messages. I had met the girl that night too. Story 17. The big hickey she had on her neck that our coworkers noticed. Our coworkers were joking around about the kind of weekend we had. Problem was that I didn't give her a hickey. She didn't even deny it when I confronted her about it. To add the hell cherry on this crap Sunday, all of this happened on Valentine's Day. It's why I hate that blasted holiday. Story 18. Meeting her boyfriend gave it away for me. Apparently, I was the side piece the whole time. First girl I really fell for, and she absolutely crushed me. Story 19. When my long-distance girlfriend told me she wouldn't be able to talk for a couple days because she was having dental surgery. Then I didn't hear from her for 2 weeks. Story 20. Crazy jealousy and rules that only applied to me but not him. Couldn't have a lock on my phone. Wasn't allowed to have Snapchat. Had to share my location, etc. I'm not a jealous person, so I never snoop. And I ended up finding out by complete accident. Story 21. It's all so cliche. He started caring about his clothes after years of sweats, ripped jeans, and old band tees. He shows up in Todd's shoes and a Ralph Lauren sweater. Suddenly, his phone is on silent and never out of his hand or pocket. Missing and unaccounted for periods of time. Serious manscaping. Story 22. Started being protective of his phone screen. Phone face down but would angle away from me if we were sitting close. Would go hang out with the boys, but would change into a clean shirt, have a shower, and brush his teeth before he left. Kicker was I found a long red hair tangled in his beard. I'm a brunette. Story 23. Less S was happening and she blamed it on meds. She constantly reassured me and I didn't pressure her. After like 2 months without I mentioned maybe bringing it up to her doctor, and she said she would, slowly became less affectionate to the point where she seemed repulsed. But she kept reassuring me. It took me taking her out to a nice lavish dinner, only for her to get straight to bed and go on Candy Crush when we got home for me to finally snap. I waited until she went asleep, looked through her phone, and got what I needed. She still denied and reassured me even in the face of evidence to the contrary. A week later, she told me that she fell out of love and hadn't loved me for months. But she never made me the wiser, still icing that wound. 2. 5+ year relationship. I've learned in the future that if a relationship doesn't work for me, I don't need to justify it or expend energy trying to fix it. Sometimes it just stops working for me, and I need to nut up and cut the losses. But it's just like, you think you can trust someone. Story 24. She called me and asked for money to pay a fine she got while riding around with another guy smoking weed. I forgave you, Ariel, but off. Story 25. The dude sent me a message from her phone that we're breaking up. When she called 10 minutes later, she was all apologetic and didn't know he took her phone. The next day they were inseparable, and after they broke up he started dating her mother. A roller coaster, I know. Story 26. His iPad was on the table in front of me. He was on a night out with customers, mutual customers, and planned to stay at his own house after as it was closer. I saw a girl FBMSG pop up saying, "Yeah, I'll come meet you and stay at yours," followed by her number. Story 27. A good friend of mine sat me down and told me my girlfriend at the time was cheating on me. They were friends with the roommate of the guy she was cheating on me with, and the roommate knew of me, so he told my friend. I was stunned, but it was just rumors still, even if they were solid ones, so I needed to confirm for myself. The flag wasn't quite red at this point, so I called my girlfriend, and immediately after she picked up, I point-blank asked her, "Did you sleep with dude's name?" She was silent for a second too long, then nervously chuckled and stammered out in a tone that can only betray that you got caught doing something terrible. "Whoa, what? No. What are you talking about?" The flag was pretty damn red at this point. So I repeated the question, but added that a very reliable person that had no reason to lie to me told me. This time, she didn't hesitate and with a subdued, cold malevolence just said, "Who told you?" It was now crimson. She tried walking it back, claiming she meant she wanted to know who it was, so she could know who was trying to get between us. But what she said, and more importantly, how she said it, meant there was no coming back. I knew. She admitted to it after a few more minutes, having realized she outed herself, and after that, we were through. Story 28. I once found a used pregnancy test in the trash we hadn't had in several weeks. When asked, she said she took it just to see how it worked. Right tat. However, my dumbass believed her. Over the next few months, she just became more and more distant until we both just grew to despise one another, and that was that. Story 29. Writing in her diary that she thought it was a woman's right to sleep around and play the field in modern times, even while in a committed relationship, then leaving said diary open to that page on her desk in plain view, after having asked me to check her physics assignment for her. Story 30. Started becoming very distant, as if he was not in the relationship at all anymore, would disappear in a room for a while, to obs have text chit-chats. Our relationship was already getting to its end, though, we both knew. He was just a coward and couldn't be alone for a second and had to find the next person before breaking it off. Best way to put it, though, you can kind of tell if your relationship is not going well. You would hope they won't be weak enough to cheat and just tell you they are unhappy in the relationship. But if you are seeing no return in a relationship, better to break it off. It's never worth dragging a dead horse. Story 31. Change in communication patterns is a big one. I've been cheated on 5 times, and every single time they start showing a lack of interest beforehand. They'll distance themselves and stop checking in, almost like they're trying to limit the damage done by forcing distance between. But in the end, it's more so about them protecting themselves and their own interests than you. If they really cared about you, they would break things off before it even reaches the point of cheating. And that is something I wish I realized sooner. Story 32. 3 years into the relationship, she told me that she doesn't like dogs, and if we were to have a future together, that I would have to get rid of my dog. I had that dog for 6 years before I met her, so I got rid of her instead. Story 33. My guts told me before everything. Then matching me against this best friend of her, she was shady, but I was so in love that I kinda deny it. Story 34. Her mom asked me to come over and showed me screenshots from her computer of her making plans to meet up with a guy while I was at work. Her sister confirmed that it was her boyfriend, and she was planning on confronting both of them and asked me to be there. I declined and ended the relationship with a phone call. Her sister was more my type anyway. The jealous looks from my ex when I came over to see her sister were priceless. Story 35. Hiding her phone when texting. And also, weirdly, our cat, who would never sit on anyone's lap, was constantly sitting with me and on me and then stopped shortly after I found out. Figure the cat was ratting her out. Good cat. I kept the cat. Story 36. The friend she previously had a crush on moved back to town. I half joked that our relationship had an end date. Suddenly she ignores me every night. Her snap maps are turned off for the first time ever. Normally, not something I care about nor check, but her acting sketchy made me curious. And showed up to work with a hickey on her neck. Told me she was leaving me to be closer to God. Turns out God's name is Kevin. Story 37. I'm noticing. This thread has an overwhelming majority of female cheater stories. I've definitely noticed the communication changes. Another one was after a concert. I went out to the bar and danced and made out with a few different girls and got some phone numbers. 2/3 of them had boyfriends when I looked up their socials. Insane. Story 38. I was too stupid to see it, too trusting and ignorant. If the guy's wife hadn't found out and told me, I probably still wouldn't know. Story 39. My gut. I tried to brush it off, but it was too strong. I then investigated, and yup, he cheated on me around 10x with one hooker and knew the dates and where. Knew about it this January. Yes, we're still together. Marriage and small kids kinda does that to you. Daily triggers and trauma. I'm just basically waiting either for this to go away, or me to pass away. Easiest way out. Story 40. Her going to hang out with her friend to play Pokemon Go and skateboard. She was gone for 7 hours. I asked her how her game went. She said they didn't play the game. I asked her how skating went. She says they didn't skate. I asked what they did, and she said, I don't know. Just hung out. After a couple weeks, she all of a sudden wanted to have every day. She was pregnant and trying to pass it off as I got her pregnant. The baby was born. I'm white, she's Hispanic, and the dude she hung out with was Hispanic. The baby came out looking completely Hispanic with no signs of being related to me. Before that happened, the dude wouldn't even look me in the eye when I met him. Story 41. Boot print on some paperwork on the ground of her passenger seat. Tried to say it was from her work shoes she was at the time. Prints did not match up. Turns out she was her manager at McDonald's. Story 42. When we met, it was all the time, it didn't matter where we were. Then it slowed down, I didn't much of it, and then it stopped. That's when the "we need space" speech came, which was funny, because she was living with me lol. We went from cuddling with one hand on tit to me not even sleeping in the same bed with her. One morning, I woke up and chose violence, so I went through her phone like the weak I was at that moment. She didn't even have the decency to delete the messages. I saw enough to kick the out at 5 a.m. Story 43. She started becoming more distant. My mom got a terminal cancer, and I didn't have time to spend with her in between driving my mom to all her appointments. So she found someone else to fill her needs. Found out, because her little brother was a homie. Story 44. Work schedule changed. Not answering phone or replying to texts. Showering immediately after getting home but never did before. More social obligations that don't include you. Phone always facing down, on silent, no text preview. Phone always with them. Longer amounts of time spent in bathroom. Dieting and joining a gym. Appearance changes. New hairstyle or clothing. Mean to you for no reason. Gets angry at small things typically overlooked. Indifference to where you are or when you'll be home. Sometimes will ask your whereabouts only to figure out how much free time they have, not because they care. Story 45. A gut feeling. Then someone randomly anonymously messaging me that he's cheating on me. Should have listened to my gut and it would have saved me a whole lot of heartbreak and terrible pain. Story 46. I made a clear joke about cheating, and she started to cry. That was the first time I found out I regrettably chose to forgive her. The second and final time I went to her work to surprise her with flowers. She was not there, and her coworker informed me she was not scheduled until later in the week. Story 47. She was constantly feeding her strict parents bullshit in order to see me. When she started feeding me similar bullshit, then wanting to go on a break 1 week after beginning her study abroad program, I knew she had likely already fooled around with someone. The messages on her Facebook all but confirmed it. Story 48. My ex-wife used to sit at the dinner table and laugh at Facebook MSGs from the guy she was cheating with. I'd ask what's so funny, and she would say, just something mom said. Her mom wasn't funny. Story 49. Not replying to my texts for hours, not admiring the compliments. She said she didn't want my compliments, which she used to love. And I know it's not a red flag, but she started smoking and drinking, which the person she was cheating with made her do it. So I got out of the relationship. Now she's addicted to something she tried to come back. But I don't believe in love anymore. Story 50. The dude she banged straight out told me in explicit detail. In all fairness to him, he didn't realize we were still together. This was almost 30 years ago, and it still hurts, and has caused me multiple long-term issues that I still fight with today. Story 51. I caught him texting and emailing with his ex, who was still in love with him and vocal about it, on several occasions. I called him on it, and he gaslit me into believing my insecurities were the problem. We broke up years later. He ended up engaged to that same ex. A mutual friend sent me a link to their wedding website, which had their couple story. They admitted to the torrid affair and how they snuck around behind my back on their wedding website. I felt so validated but ashamed I had doubted my intuition. He's her problem now and I'm blissfully happy. Story 52. He came back with gifts. He insisted were innocent friend things from a guy, but tried to hide them. He was also acting weird whenever he came home after being at the same workplace with that person. He wasn't great at covering his tracks. He also started being down all the time when the guy left the workplace. Turns out some time later he came out as gay, and my suspicions were right about the guy. He admitted everything. Story 53. All of a sudden, wanting to go to the bar for happy hour with her single girlfriends, co-workers. Going out of town for work, not inviting me, or letting me know where she was or who was usually there. Hang up phone calls and someone driving by our house at all hours, same car. Coming home unexpectedly from hunting to find the toilet seat up in our bathroom. We have 2 daughters, myself and the ex. I always put the seat down so my girls wouldn't touch it. Working late on Valentine's Day. Acting differently towards the preacher when I was there. Volunteering 3 to 4 nights a week at church when she worked full-time and had 2 daughters. I could go on and on. She's story 54. She always turned her phone away from me and hid her phone screen. I wasn't even trying to see it, which made me suspicious. I'd just walk by her when she was sitting on the couch and she'd turn the phone away from me. She would accuse me going through her phone, which I never did. I started to think maybe I should go through her phone. I went through her phone. She was cheating. I confronted her and she tried to make it into me invading her privacy by reading her phone. If I hadn't gone through her phone, then everything would be fine because I wouldn't know she was cheating. Schrodinger's phone? If I didn't read she was cheating, then she wasn't actually cheating? Pretty sure she legitimately thought that too. Story 55. I helped her move all her things into the new apartment. Everything seemed amazing during the almost 2-week-long move-in, We went from having multiple times a day to her not even wanting me to sleep next to her. While I was setting up her Wi-Fi and cable, I noticed she had like 4 guys Snapchatting her. Thought it was weird, but just ignored it. 4 days after she was fully settled in, she told me that she was involved with someone else for almost 3 months. Mind you, I dated this woman for 5 years. She ended up getting engaged to this man she cheated on me with, then he cheated on her, and she came running back to me. By that time, I got my dream job, made amazing money, owned my own house, had a new truck sitting in the driveway, and a beautiful woman that takes amazing care of me and loves me unconditionally. I politely told her to go herself. Then she tried to wreck my current relationship and epically failed. Karma is a story 56. A male friend who was constantly messaging each other. Like way more than she messaged anyone else. I knew it was happening, but I didn't have any actual evidence, so I did a bad thing and went through her messages. And there it was, plain as day, so I just dumped her and moved on. I wish I had screenshot it though, as afterwards she claimed all innocence and that I was the bad guy, and she was a sweet, innocent victim. Not that I cared much about anyone who turned their backs on me, but it would have been good to have the last laugh. Story 57. One thing that can give cheaters away is projecting. If you've been with someone a while and out of the blue, they become suspicious and start with accusation for no reason. It can be a good indicator that they are getting up to no good. Story 58. This was a long time ago. My GF and I always drove to school together and listened to music, which we had pretty similar tastes for. One day, out of the blue, without saying anything, she pops out the CD we were listening to and puts in a band that was completely different from what we typically liked. I went, "Where'd you hear about this?" She said, "Oh, my friend," guy's name, told me about them. I'd never heard of this friend, and she seemed unreasonably irritated when I said I thought the music kind of sucked. Story 59. I remember this one time with my ex. We went out for a day outing and came back home. We drank wine whilst watching a series, and she got up to go to the bathroom several times with excuses, and during one of those times, sent me a picture out of the blue, which had never happened in our relationship before, so it raised my alarm bells. She then passes out on the bed and is snoring away. Although I was slightly intoxicated, my gut told me something was seriously off and to check her phone since I noticed a guy's name pop up during one of the bathroom breaks. She told me that they were just platonic friends and that he helped her with her mental health issues, etc. I open WhatsApp, and he is nowhere to be found on the general list. After a bit of looking around, I find that he was on the archived list. Turns out that they were playing a game of sexting each other during her bathroom breaks, and she slated me in the chat, saying that our last date was shit and that I was an ex. So I guess always look out for the small changes in behavior that give things away. Story 60. We were at someone's wedding reception. The bride and groom were cutting the cake, so most of the guests were up and paying attention to the newlyweds. I pretended to step away to go to the restroom down the hall from the ballroom. I had my suspicions, but like most cheaters, he blew me off and called me crazy. Said I was paranoid and delusional. Because everyone was so preoccupied with couples' cake festivities, I got down on my hands and knees and crawled across the carpet on the floor behind our table and stuck my head under the table. They didn't notice me because he was too busy finger-banging her. She was too busy giving him a hand job, and both were engrossed in their selfish hedonism. They both snapped out of it when they were both hit in the face with water and ice from a large champagne bucket. Glad I drove my own car. After that, I got in my car and burnt out. He was stranded there because, to my surprise, she was there with her boyfriend, who was the cousin of the bride. Her boyfriend was her ride, and all of the people that the cheater knew had no room for him in their cars. He had to leave early because the public buses stopped running at 10:30 p.m., and he forgot to grab his wallet with his credit cards in it. He bought a new wallet. He put his driver's license and cash in the new wallet, but forgot the credit cards. Don't know what they told people at reception about how they came to be soaking wet, nor do I care. I am just glad that I finally caught him, so I didn't have to deal with his lies and philandering anymore. Good riddance. Story 61. When I called her home and her mom didn't know where she was. We were in college and I was working a lot, and I also had an internship. I worked 7 days a week, and that internship, which I was doing to help give us a better future, has paid off. Within a few days, it was over. Later, she admitted it was the worst mistake she ever made. I did convince her to dump the guy she cheated on me with, and we hooked up a bunch, but then I dumped her. That felt good, unfortunately. Story 62. She eventually came clean when we broke up. Hindsight. First sign, she left my Clash of Clans clan. She joined a new clan, and it ended up being the clan of a guy she was smoking weed and hooking up with. She met at work. Also was weirdly texting new friend all the time. Turned out it was him, but she changed the name in her phone. Worst part was, I later learned I drove her to his place to buy weed one night. Who knows what happened in there? I was waiting in the car while she went in to pick it up. Story 63. She canceled our plans last minute as I was nearly at the meeting place as an old friend came to town. This old friend had done this a few times before. Just roll into town and tell her with the expectation to drop everything. Anyway, this friend had a friend that she had previously had a thing with. He came into town that day too. I decided to go to the meeting place as I knew a mate would be there, as it was a common hangout spot. I go there and hang out with my mate. Then, a little while after, she walks past hand in hand with the guy she used to and her other mate. They see me and quickly do a U-turn out of sight. They didn't think I saw them. A bit later, she came and found me and was all over me with just her mate that would come to town. I promptly told her to off, and when he got chirpy, I threatened to smash his jaw. Story 64. I was sitting in the backseat of her car while her friend sat in the front and she drove. Noticed a box in the seat pouch. It was the condoms I'd bought for us maybe a few days earlier. We'd only used one. There were several more missing. Story 65. There were a lot of red flags, but the one I regret not seeing, and probably the most obvious, was getting angry over nothing and being super defensive out of nowhere. Story 66. He brought me to his apartment for the first time. I woke up to run to the bathroom, and his closet was wide open and saw female clothes and a baby boy's clothes. Boyfriend of 1 year, known for 2, family all loved him, was married. His wife was out of town and he got drunk and missed me and thought I wouldn't notice. Story 67. We met on Tinder, and we were looking, or so I thought, for a relationship. We got together. I went on small pre-planned vacation with family. When I came back, Tinder had magically reinstalled itself on his phone. He made excuses like there was an update blah blah. Story 68 Facebook. I was so head over heels in love with this woman that I ignored, missed the obvious signs. Lots of girls' nights out, etc. However, in the Facebook people you may know sections, this guy with an obviously fake name kept showing up. After a while, I looked at his profile, and there were pics of him and my girlfriend out at bars, at breakfast, and other places. The dates on the pictures corresponded to her girls' weekends. I was at work when I found out, and it was all I could do not to throw up. Story 69. She literally called some guy while changing positions while having with me and said, "It's just," to the guy on the phone. I got my things and got out of there faster than Usain Bolt winning Berlin in 2009. Story 70. She started hanging out with single girls from work. Anytime they went out, she won't make it home. Then a dude she was told me because he found out she was married and he felt bad. Story 71. I kept finding the front passenger seat of my car adjusted strangely. After this happening more than twice in a short period of time, I started to question it. Shortly after that, my wife didn't come home one night, and I was able to track her down to the place of the guy she was banging by calling her friends. Maybe that was 2 red flags. My sympathies to everyone responding in here with their stories. Being cheated on is absolutely gut-wrenching, and the feelings are so long-lasting. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. Story 72. He said he started playing poker all night with his friends every Saturday. My grandmother would quiz him on poker rules. She was a real card shark, and he didn't know what TF she was talking about. Cheating was the best thing he could have done for me because it kicked me in my and led to our breakup. Story 73. One day he asked me to get an Xbox code from his email while he was at a friend's. So I pulled up his laptop and grabbed the code, but while I was in there, I saw Craigslist Personals emails. The cheesy posted a missed connection that said, "You fell in love with my dog, but I fell in love with you." It was my dog. Dumbass. I left a sticky note that said "awesome" on the screen and left it up and left. He was freaking out, blowing up my phone trying to explain LOL. Story 74. He started being dodgy about things he normally wouldn't be. When I asked him how his night out was, he said it was fun, rather than giving me the details of the whole night. I also started catching him on smaller lies that didn't need to be lied about. I saw that he had played Animal Crossing because your Switch notifies you when your friends are online. I asked him later that day, "How was Animal Crossing? Did you update your town?" And he lied that he didn't play. When I brought up that I saw him online, he lied again, saying that he must have accidentally turned it on. His playtime went up by like 3-4 hours, and he was online for 3-4 hours, so I knew he was lying, but I dropped it. Back then, I was so baffled about why he was lying about Animal Crossing, but then I found out he was playing with her. There were other instances of little lies like this, who went to the party, events I never learned about, etc. But the Animal Crossing one sticks in my head because we were whole adults, lol.